It's a very old and long story. I'd gone to study chemical engineering at the Indian Institute of Architects. I was born in Hyderabad in India, and I did my schooling in Hyderabad, and after that I joined the Indian Institute of Technology in Bombay to do chemical engineering. But after a year I gave up because I felt at that time that I was not cut for it. So I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was really not sure of what I was going to do. But during the holidays, summer holidays that year, I started sketching, and perhaps then realized that maybe I should study architecture. But then I was also reminded of a lecture that I had sat through when I was in school, and that lecture was given by none other than Louis Kahn, the famous architect, famous American architect, who was visiting India at that time. He had designed a few structures in Ahmedabad and I think also in Bangalore. So he was visiting Hyderabad, and our principal brought him to the school to inspire. Now I didn't know if remember that it was Louis Kahn. It was many years later that I asked that principal. I said, "Who was that person you had brought?" And he said, "It was Louis Kahn." So I think his talk was instrumental in sort of making me study architecture. I don't have any style. I don't work with styles. Right from the beginning, I have been designing my projects in consonance with nature. Most of the projects that I have done until recently were residential projects, houses. And for that, nature for me was very important. I designed with nature, designed in a way that the natural elements like water, greenery, fresh breeze, daylight, all that is incorporated in the design. So right from the beginning, from all the houses that I have designed, I've tried to do that, and that has not changed. Even today, nature is really my inspiration. If you call that inspiration, that is the inspiration, because as I said, I incorporate all the elements in my design. Sustainability, etc., is all coined by the West. If you design intelligently, and as I said, if you design keeping in mind the nature, natural elements, then automatically you are designing a sustainable building. You're not depending on air conditioning, you're not depending on all the other aspects of building which which are non-sustainable. So I don't particularly go in for, and I don't really believe, frankly, I don't believe in the LEED certification, etc., because that is something that the West has given us. Throughout history, we've built environmentally friendly buildings. It is only recently, in the past 50 years or so, when our dependency on glass, on air conditioning, on imported material, all that has sort of increased. Otherwise, if you use local material, And as I said, if you use it intelligently, you're looking at the sun path, designing your buildings in a way that you cut out direct sunlight, you catch in as much breeze as possible, and use material which, as I said, is locally available, and then you're on the right path. My ultimate goal has always been to design good buildings, create appropriate architecture. That's been the goal, and it continues to be the same. In fact, and also I would very strongly, and I have been a strong proponent of using local material. Whenever somebody brings me or shows me an imported, let's say, tile, or a company sort of sends samples of tiles, I always talk to them and say, is there a possibility of your manufacturing here the same tiles locally? You have to encourage local building industry, and that you can only do if you start using it and not depend on imported material. I have reduced my workload. I do design, and I have been doing it for all these years, 50 odd years I've been designing. But with the expansion of my firm, with more directors joining in, and a larger number of architects working with us in the firm, I've reduced my workload. I choose smaller projects, but I'm involved with the other projects to some extent, involved with the other projects that are designed by firm. Typical day I cannot say, because there are so many other things other than your professional work that goes on. I'm involved in many other outside activities, whether they are professional or social. Then there's a lot of corporate social responsibility, CSR work that we do, which generally I've been looking after in the office. So I do a lot of that. So the day goes by. Designing is rarely done in the office. You can't, because there are too many distractions. You need to have, you need to sit in a space when there's all quiet, there are no distractions, and you're able to concentrate, you're able to think. And that usually comes at home. Of course, the design process is more exciting, and in the execution process there always seem to be frustrations, because the execution is not in your own hand, and if you have good contractors, then it's a pleasure working with them. But if you are stuck with contractors who are not efficient or who are not capable, then there are a lot of frustrations. So I would be happy to just design and get somebody else to have it executed. Although I'm unhappy when this happens, because the finishes and the quality is not up to expectations. So I get involved finally in the process and the execution process as well. For a residence, for instance, the involvement of the owners or the stakeholders or people who are going to live in the house is very important, because they are going to live in the house. They've got to be there, they've got to be happy. For your own happiness or gratification or your sort of sense of achievement, you design something which your client cannot appreciate or doesn't feel comfortable in, then you have not succeeded. The challenge is for you to design something well, for which you are satisfied, and also satisfy your client. Interference from the client should not be there. The client has got to place some trust in you, but then you also have to listen to the client. And if you find that the client is interfering too much or is, coming in the way or suggesting something which is not good, then it's your duty to convince the client. You've got to convince the client that what he is asking for is not correct or is not appropriate. When you get into the institutional or corporate buildings, then the interference is much less, because they somehow have appointed you, the clients there recognize that you are the expert and recognize that what you are doing is best for them. The corporate clients, the institutional clients, they have faith in you. They know that whatever you do is going to be for their good. So there's usually very little interference. It's rare that somebody comes and says, "Nee, do this or do that." It happens though sometimes, but it's more for houses. But then that is understandable. But they should go to a good architect, first of all, because this is professional work. There are so many of the people who are building houses feel that they can design and they can get away with it. And they only realize once they've got into it that they've made a mess of it. But people don't learn lessons. So if you have a good understanding architect, then that architect would be able to translate your dreams, your thoughts, your wishes onto paper and then into reality. So that is my first piece of advice. The second is, please don't interfere too much in the design process unless you understand what you're getting. Only for the sake of saying, change this or do that, doesn't work. Success doesn't come easily. You have to work hard, you have to establish yourself, and you have to make a name for yourself, not just as an architect, but as a good human being.